Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stuart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Impact Makers Radio. Today's guest helps business owners, professionals, speakers, authors, and coaches to become great guests on radio shows so that they can build their brand, get attention, and leverage existing talk show audiences to find out more about what they do. Now, he's also the host of a popular iTunes show called Celebrity Entrepreneur Radio, featuring some of the most successful business owners in the world. So, I'm really excited about introducing him to you today. I can't wait to get him on, as he's got a great message to share. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen. Without any further delay, let's welcome him to the show, CEO of Joel Helfer, LLC, and founder of the 10-Minute Radio Producer. And I'm sure he's going to share some information about that later on. The very man himself, Joel Helfer. Joel, welcome to the show. Are you there, my friend?
Good morning, Stuart. How are you? And thank you very much for putting me on the show.
You are so welcome, Joel, and thank you for asking. I am great. A fine sunny day here where I am in my part of the world, and so looking forward to having you on the show because I know it's taken a while to get you on here. You've been so busy doing so many interviews out there, so we do feel honored to have you here.
Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. So with that said, Joel, let's just jump straight in and ask you the first question. Who is your perfect prospect, Joel? Who is it that you help out there?
My perfect prospect is someone who's interested in getting more attention and more exposure and going from visible to invisible. And like you said just before, I work with business owners. I work with all types of professionals, doctors, lawyers, CPAs, chiropractors, dentists, authors, speakers, anyone who has a nice message to share and wants to find a very large audience to share it with quickly and easily. And one of the best ways to do that is on radio.
Perfect. I mean, that sounds really interesting, Joel. And you have a varied, let's say, an array of people that you help out there. So let me ask you this. While you're out there consulting and helping these professionals, can you name, let's say, 2 to 3 common obstacles that prevent them from getting more attention and that exposure that you mentioned?
Well, once people are offered an opportunity to be a guest on a radio show, they take on a different personality. A lot of people don't believe they even can get on a radio show. It's a new opportunity, a new experience. One of their biggest obstacles is they don't believe their voice sounds good. 99% of people don't believe that, and that's just not true. And the other obstacle is they just don't want to be embarrassed. They want to do a good job, and they want to present themselves well.
Well, let's dig a little bit deeper into that third obstacle that you mentioned. They don't want to be embarrassed, because I can imagine that's quite a popular one that you come across. Could you just dig a little bit deeper into that and maybe share an example of somebody who felt that, I'm going to be embarrassed if I go onto a show, but after working with you, the results were something different?
Well, I worked with a large tool manufacturer in Chicago who wanted to be on the radio to make a demo tape that he could take to China to play on Chinese radio, which was interesting. And he had a big contract that he wanted to sign, and he wanted to make sure that he represented himself and his company well, because there was a lot of money on the line. So that's a perfect example of not wanting to be embarrassed. A second one is just a personal thing where you go on the radio and one of your family members hears it, let's say your brother-in-law, and then you meet him at Thanksgiving, for example, and he says, you didn't sound so good on the radio.
No, that's mean, isn't it? That's not necessary.
That's human nature, and these are the things that go through people's minds. So what we do is we actually tell them something simple. Just relax, and we practice. And once we do a little bit of practice, all those obstacles seem to just disappear.
Mm. I mean, the other one that you mentioned, Joel, about my voice just doesn't sound good enough. I hear so many people say that they just cannot stand the sound of their own voice. However, if they've got a message to share that can help other people, then what do you have to say to those people?
Most people believe that because they've rarely ever heard their voice recorded. They just never had the experience. And once we record it and we play it back a few times and they get comfortable listening to their own voice, that also is an obstacle that gradually disappears. It's just a matter of not worrying about how you sound, but what you say that counts.
Right. I can totally concur with that. I remember when I first started doing my first shows, and I thought, "Oh, is that me? Do I really sound like that?" But after a while, when you hear yourself a few more times, and it just becomes normal. And especially if you do have a message to share with people, that's going to help them. That's going to change their situation for the better.
Well, you can think of it like this: when you talk to people every day, no one says, "Boy, your voice sounds terrible." Have you ever heard that? No one's ever heard that because people don't say that.
Joe, everybody says, "Oh, I've got a smooth, silky James Bond voice." Nobody says that to me. Anyway, moving on, Joe. Let's talk about some of the, let's call them misconceptions, or the things what people may have bought into, beliefs they may have bought into that may not be correct. So while you're out there working with the people you help the most, name me 2 or 3 of those popular misconceptions that you come across that prevent people from gaining more attention and more exposure.
Well, one of the most obvious ones, since radio is part of everyone's life, almost from the minute they drive a car, they just don't believe that they could ever be on the radio. It just seems like beyond their reach, like something only celebrities get an opportunity to do, which isn't the case. And we tell them that anyone can be on the radio, you just have to do it. And the other misconception is a lot of people just don't have the confidence to believe that they're really an expert in their field. And to be an expert, you don't have to know everything about your field. You just have to have a passion and enjoyment for what you do and be able to solve 1 or 2 problems that can really help people. And that's all it takes to have a good radio interview.
Joel, if you don't mind, can we just expand a little bit about this misconception that people have bought into, that they don't consider themselves an expert? Because that's something that I've heard so many times. "Oh, Stuart, I'm just not good enough for this." However, when you look at that person, you know that their level of expertise is so much more than the people that they can serve. So can we just dig a little bit deeper? What would you like to say to any individual, any organization that is listening to this interview right now, and they're thinking, I'm just not good enough for this. I'm not an expert. What would you like to say to them, Joel, to let's squash that myth, let's squash that belief right now?
Well, the answer is that they are, and they are because they spend most of their waking moments at work or even at home working and thinking and producing in their occupation, whatever that may be. And they're really good at it. And they talk to people every day. They help people solve problems every day in the real world. So why not do it over the airwaves? It's just another channel of communication to help people and extend your reach to help people maybe in a different part of the United States, or for that matter, a different part of the world that you never would come in contact with.
Joel, we spoke about some of the obstacles, and you just addressed some of the misconceptions, the false beliefs that are out there. If there is somebody who is thinking, Joel, Stuart, this really sounds easy. It's not, can't be that difficult. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get myself on radio shows, and I'm going to start sharing my expertise, because you just said to me, I'm an expert. I can talk with people. If there's somebody out there, if there are individuals, organizations thinking about that, what are some of the pitfalls, some unknown pitfalls that they should be, let's say, aware of before they start doing that on their own?
Well, once they get an opportunity to get an interview on the radio, there's a couple of things that they need to think about and be aware of. One is speaking not too quickly, but speaking a little bit slower with the best diction you have so people can understand you. And then the other thing is you need to do a little bit of preparation. You just can't go on a radio show and wing it. You have to have something to say, a message. You don't want a script, but you need bullet points, some key points that you want to get across that can actually help people.
Okay, so, Joe, I mean, we've been speaking, 10, 15 minutes now, and it seems to me that this is something that you are very passionate about. I mean, do you enjoy doing this? Is it a lot of fun for you, Joe?
Oh, it's a lot of fun, and part of being a good radio guest is enjoying it and trying to be a little bit entertaining and not boring and tell a few stories. Like yesterday, I was on the radio, and I thought I was in a real quiet room, and we have a collie. And somehow my colleague got into the room and started barking in the middle of the interview. That sure blew my professionalism right out the window.
I bet. I could tell some stories about background noises. Trust me, I could do that as well. Yeah, for sure. It's fun. You got to have fun. I mean, I've had so much fun doing interviews myself. I've had here in Cairo, we have somebody who comes every day. We call him the lemon man, and he comes outside our door and he shouts, "I've got lemons, in Arabic, right? I'm just giving you the translation. And he always seems to start just when I'm about to start an interview. And it was today as well. I haven't heard him for, maybe 2 days, and just before I started our interview, he was outside shouting. I thought, this is just typical. So yeah, you got to have fun. That is important. So keeping in that vein, though, Joel, we'll just talk about fun. And the opposite side of fun, there's fear, right? I mean, people fear going on to the radio. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the common fears that you come across when you're out there trying to help people, trying to show them how good it is for them to get onto these radio shows so that they can gain that attention and they can gain more exposure. What are some of the fears that you come across that hold people back from doing that?
Well, one of the things is simple. It's no different than when you speak live in front of a group. You get nervous. And nervous is good because if it's used and channeled in the right way, it actually makes you a better interview, a better speaker. So it's okay to be a little nervous because even seasoned professionals get that way sometime. And we just tell people to relax, take a deep breath, and think about it as a conversation that you're having with a family member or your best friend. And the other thing that really people worry about is what they're going to say. And I just tell them to sit down and make it simple. Take one problem, one thing that you're really, really good at, and provide a simple solution that people can put into practice that very day. Because you can't talk about everything you do on the radio. There's just enough time. You want to tease people. You want to give them just enough information so they want to find out more about you.
Joe, whenever I ask this next question, it always seems obvious, right? It's an almost void question, but it's something I got to ask anyway, because the listeners always find the answer to this really interesting. So we've spoken so far about the people who you help, and their main objective is to gain more attention and more exposure. So having said that, my question is, why would they want to do that? Why would they want to gain more attention, more exposure? Please.
Well, in today's world, there are so many channels of communication that you're exposed to. It's a cluttered world between radio, television, internet, direct mail, communications with business people, communications with friends, communications with family, plus your own internal clock that's working. There's so many places your mind wanders to. And people want to get in front of as many people as possible who they can help, because it's real simple. It rings the register. And when you boil it all down, that's the reason for it, is to get an opportunity to get in front of people with a consistent message and look like an expert or an authority in your field, which gives you an opportunity to make money. Because that's really the outcome, the bottom line. That's what everybody is looking for. They won't admit it, but really that's what it's all about.
So an added benefit to that is, or let me ask you, is an added benefit to the exposure and the attention also to build credibility and trust for their business?
Those are the benefits, the things that you have to have in place before someone will do business with you. And when you're interviewing on the radio, you automatically get the third-party endorsement of the talk show host, his show, and all his audience, because they figure, well, why would you be interviewed by someone if you didn't know what you're talking about? So there's your first bit of credibility. And then when you sound good and relaxed, you start to gain a little bit of trust, because everybody wants to do business with somebody who's enthusiastic, who's sharp, who enjoys what they're talking about, who's fun to listen to. These are all the things that your subconscious mind is constantly working on and analyzing. And in a lot of cases, you only have a few seconds to get that message across, and then people pigeonhole you and they decide, well, this is somebody I'd like to do business with or talk to more, and this is somebody I wouldn't. So that's why you need to practice a little bit, because you want to be someone that they want to find out more about.
Okay, and that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about people not feeling that they're worthy enough or that they're not expert enough to go on a show. And it just reminded me of some of the small business owners out there that I've spoken with myself. And I'd just like you to share your expert opinion on this for us, Joel. A lot of people think going on a radio show, that's just for the experts, that's for these consultants, that's for these top expert marketing guys. But what if you're just a small local business? What if you're a plumber? What if you're an electrician? What if you're an accountant? What if you're a lawyer? Is that something also for them to go onto radio shows and share their expertise with people?
That's fabulous, because those are everyday situations that people need to know who to contact, because there's nothing more frustrating than needing a service like a plumber or a lawyer, someone to cut your grass, and not knowing who to call. And when you hear somebody on the radio, you say, gee, there's someone I think I can call who can help me. So it's a great way to get your point across. And people don't think of it. They just don't believe they can do it. And once they start, what happens is, after a while, it becomes addictive. And you want to be on the radio as much as you can.
Let's just play a little scenario here, Joel, right? Just in real time. I know you're not prepared for this. Let's imagine we have let's say a divorce lawyer. What kind of information, what kind of model would that divorce lawyer use to go on a radio show?
Well, if we picked a divorce lawyer, usually the divorce lawyers, there's different types of divorce lawyers. Some represent men, some represent women, some represent estates, trusts, children. Some work for the state or the county or a city. So let's pick one and say that the guy works for men, because usually most people believe that men always get the short end of the stick in a divorce case. So he could go on the radio and say, I can represent you and make sure that at the end you're going to have something left. You're going to have your integrity, you're going to have peace of mind, and you're going to have a fair share of your assets. That would be an example of what an attorney could do that would attract a lot of people to call him.
Right. So if he's out there putting out this educational information that educates prospective clients, then when they are in the market, God forbid we don't want anybody to get divorced, then what you're saying is that particular divorce lawyer, he would be the one that they would most likely choose because he's already been educating, he's already been building the trust, he's already been establishing his credibility through going on to various radio shows. Is that correct? Am I on the right lines there?
It is. As a matter of fact, there is one particular attorney who's on TV all the time in Chicago, and he's written books, and that's basically what he says. He says, I'll make sure that you get a fair deal. And that's the problem that most men have in this particular sad situation. And he promotes the fact that he'll protect you. He'll be your knight in shining army. So so you don't get taken to the cleaners.
Right. So, Joel, let's talk about the types of conversations what people are having on these shows. Are they going on these shows and I am the expert, and they're talking using lots of industry jargon, and they're really trying to sound super intelligent, or are they the kind of shows that you're encouraging people to go on and just be yourself and have the normal conversations that you have every day with your prospects and clients?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. You just want to talk in simple terms. Most people aren't interested in you promoting yourself as an expert. They just want to have a little fun. They want to have a little entertainment. Sometimes they want information, but the radio is more just an outlet to take your mind off your own problems. So if you're listening to somebody and he's at all entertaining, at all amusing, that's what people are looking for. The information, that's a good thing, but that's really not why they turn on and dial in and listen to people. They listen to people because they want to hear stories like when you talk on the radio, you're supposed to have a nice quiet place with no interruptions. And you're talking about the guy that's selling lemons, and I'm talking about my collie that decides to bark as loud and as quick as she can.
Yeah, exactly.
You talk about now this is where you talk about being embarrassed. That's really an embarrassing thing, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was the least embarrassing story. I've got many more, trust me.
You don't want to sound like an expert. It's just a conversation, and all it is a different way of reaching people and reaching a larger number of people. Whereas if you were talking to someone one-to-one, you can only talk to one person. This is one to many. And some of the radio shows I've been on, they've got a reach of 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 people. Now, they're all not going to listen, but you're going to get a lot more than one person listening to you, which is really what you want.
Exactly. Okay, Joe, we've reached this stage of our talk where you spoke about some of the obstacles and some of the misconceptions, the things, the false beliefs people have bought into, some of the unknown pitfalls they need to be aware of, and you also addressed some of their fears. So you shared a lot of great information so far to help the listeners out there. What I'd love for you to do right now is to talk a little bit about yourself. Who is Joel Helfer? I mean, when did you get started? What's your backstory? How did you link what you do today with how you got started? If you could just share some of that information and also share what's your brand, what's your solution, what it's all about, so people out there have an idea about, whether this is something for them or not. If you could just do that for us, please, Joel.
My family started a little glass business, and I spent the majority of my life in Chicago in the construction industry, selling glass, installing glass and metal. We were in the construction industry. My grandfather started it back in the early part of the 1900s, and it went all the way up to just about 5 years ago. And then we had an opportunity to sell our business, so we took it, even though it was a sad day because we had spent 3 generations in this business. And then I needed something else to do. And logically, I was attracted to this weird digital world, where they said that, buy a computer, go online, you can make a lot of money with no effort, the great myth. So
you saw that message too? Okay.
so I did that, and I bought into the trap, But ultimately, I, by accident, ended up in a group of people who were involved in authority marketing. And I quickly realized that I had been using this particular strategy in my whole business career, never knowing it was called authority marketing or never knowing there was even a body of knowledge. We just used different techniques and strategies to do business. And when I found it, I said, gee, this is something I know something about, and I like the people. So I got involved, and I wrote a few articles, and I talked to a few people. And one day someone read one of my articles on LinkedIn, and he happened to have a real live radio show in Chicago, 560 AM, The Answer. So he called me up, and he says, I'm having a problem getting guests for my show. And he says, I could use somebody to help me. And I read some of your articles, and I saw your background, and I know you're a businessman, and you spend a lot of your time on the phone. Do you think you could help me get radio guests? I don't know anything about it. So I go, well, why not? Let's give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen, right? So he says, I'll tell you what, if you want to do this, to give you a little more credibility, I'm going to make you my radio producer, which kind of turned me on. So he says, oh, I've got a new title now, a little different. So I did this for a couple of years, and we actually learned the business. This is a real radio show that was on weekly in Chicago, from a half an hour to an hour, and it had between 4 to 6 guests, and it was broadcast all over the United States on AM radio. And I actually learned how to get guests. We did it, a lot of it we did through social media and other ways, and I learned how to get a guest and how to prepare a guest. And by working with these guests, we learned all these different problems that we talked about. And I did this for a couple of years, and then I got kind of addicted to it because it was a new medium. It was fun for me because I love to talk to people. As a matter of fact, my wife affectionately calls me a loudmouth, which may or may not be true. We'll leave that one alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's just leave that one out there, right? Okay.
But the point is that I enjoyed this particular medium because it was so different, and I enjoyed working with the people because when we gave them an opportunity to be on the radio, the majority of people really liked it. They thought it was kind of sexy. They really liked, gee, I can be on the radio? Wow. And they wanted to know more about it. But then when they got the actual opportunity, the actual invitation, all this other stuff kicked in their heads, about, gee, am I going to sound good? How does my voice sound? Will I know what to say? Am I going to be embarrassed? All this stuff. So we quickly found a way to calm them down and get them ready. And once they were on the radio and they actually had the interview and they left the studio, because a lot of this was live, this was in a real live radio studio, they said, gee, I'd like to do that again. I should have said this. I should have said that. I should have been a little more entertaining. Do you think I can do this again? And that was the result. And that's the fun part. And a lot of people we gave a second and a third opportunity.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about this 10-minute radio producer brand. It sounds absolutely intriguing. So please share a little bit more about that for us, please, John.
What happened is on occasion, someone would not show up for the interview, or they would call up the night before and say, I can't be there. I have to be here. I have a problem, business or personal, and I can't be on the show, which would strike terror in the hearts of the talk show hosts and me as the producer, because we had everything all set up. So what we have to do is we have a waiting list of fill-in guests, and what we would do is we'd only have a few minutes before the show to call them up and get them ready. And basically, in 10 or 12 minutes, which doesn't sound like a long time, you can basically have someone do a little practice interview for 4 or 5 minutes, just like you did with me, like you introduced me. Who are you? What are you all about? What do you have to say? And when they run through it for 4 or 5 minutes, then you tell them a joke, or you calm them down, or you get them to take a couple of deep breaths. And then you say, don't worry about this, because the worst thing that can happen if you're not satisfied is you don't have to take the recording and publish it, because that's the real value of a radio interview. The radio interview is the first step. It's the publishing and repurposing of the recording to get in front of your ideal prospect that really makes it valuable. So I told them, if this doesn't work out, we just won't publish it. You'll get the recording. A few people will hear it who know you. A lot of people won't. We'll just do it again. So it's like no harm, no foul. And when I told them that, all of a sudden it wasn't such a big deal. And then we had a few other things we did where we actually gave them like a little cheat sheet that they could fill out, which had a little bit about their background and 2 or 3 or 4 key points that they wanted to talk about, and 1 problem and 1 solution. And that's enough. And you can literally do that in maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 at the most, to get them prepared so they have a nice interview and a nice experience.
Right. So you just mentioned something, 1 problem, 1 solution. Could you just expand a little bit on that for us, please, Joel?
Yeah. In a short interview, 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, you can't tell everybody everything you know about your business, and they don't want to know anyways. But if you can give them 1 problem and a solution that they can implement quickly, they'll consider you as someone who knows what he's talking about, and they'll find the radio interview valuable. Like, for example, if I would just have 1 problem, the biggest problem is how do you get on a radio show? You know, how do you get booked? And it's simple. You create what's known as a 1 sheet. It has your picture. It has a topic, and you want to put the topic at the top to make it interesting to the talk shows that his listeners might be interested in hearing. And then you'll give him 4 or 5 questions that he might be able to ask you to make his job easy. And then underneath that, you put a little biographical information about who you are and why you're qualified to talk on this. And then you say, here's my contact information, and I'd love you to consider scheduling me for the show. And it's called a 1 sheet. And that's all you do. And then you either can send it out digitally or by mail. And if you put it in the right hands, people call you up and say, gee, I like this topic. I think this would be great for my show. When can I schedule you for an interview? And that's how it all begins.
Perfect. Well, I think you have led by example today, demonstrating the 1 problem, 1 solution method. You came onto the show and you demonstrated how people can gain more attention, more exposure. So you are certainly, as we say, drinking your own Kool-Aid. Joe, it's been amazing. We've unfortunately run out of time. So before you share how people can get hold of you, do you have any final thoughts for us, please, Joel?
Well, the best thing for people to be aware of is that according to the Washington Post, 75 million people a month listen to either internet or satellite or real radio. So with that size of market, that's something any intelligent businessman, speaker, coach, author wants to get a part of. They want to be involved in that. And it's a medium that is often underutilized, and it's something easier to get into, and it's something you should take a look at.
Joel, it's been fantastic. You shared a lot of great information that's going to be very useful, actionable steps for our listeners. So if there's somebody out there now, Joel, who thinks, you know something, this Joel Helfer, he's not only a fantastic expert at what he does, he looks good, he sounds good. I want to know more. I want to learn more from Joel. So if that's the case, how will they get hold of you, Joel? How can they connect with you?
It's easy. I'm on Google. They can just Google my name, Joel Helfer, and you'll see me all over the first page. You can find me on Facebook under my name. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name. I have an email address, the initial J, Helfer, Helf as in Frank, ER, J Helfer 217 @gmail.com. I also have a website I'm redoing now. It's called joelhelfer.com. And if you really are in a hurry to talk to me, I have a cell phone number that I give out to people who are kind enough to call. It's 847-946-8522. And I'm the old-fashioned guy who actually answers the telephone.
Which is rare. It's a rare commodity. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
847-946-8522. You're right. That's a rare commodity today because when you pick up the phone, usually you get the proverbial voicemail.
Exactly. Now, I hope your wife is not a jealous woman because you're a good-looking guy, Joel. So I know your phone's been ringing off the hook with all these ladies wanting to know more about exposure and attention.
Stuart, thank you very much for having me on the radio show. I really enjoyed
so welcome,
this.
My friend. You're so welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That was Joel Helfer. Please look him up if you are thinking about getting yourself booked on radio shows. Joel is the go-to guy to help you get prepared for that. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This was yours truly, Stuart Andrew Alexander, saying no matter where you are or what you're doing, you are a global impact maker.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.